Well, hey, man, we really appreciate you stopping by. I have one final question for you, Kyle, before we let you go. And that's just about the state of the general election. Like I said, we're less than a month away now. Obviously, the polls have tightened a lot. Zach and I have been forecasting that the momentum is on Kamala Harris' side. I think it's pretty clear. I think if the election was held today, she would win. But it is October. There's still a month left, and a lot of crazy stuff's happening. There's, it's getting biblical out there, guys. There's hurricanes, there's wars, there's famine. It's the apocalypse out there. So a lot could happen, right? Who's to say what will go down a month from now? But I'm interested in your take. What do you think is going to happen on November 5th? Obviously, anything could happen, but if you had to predict, gun to your head, who's going to win the election, what's your analysis?
So if the election were held today, I would say it's a 55 or 60% chance that Kamala wins. So I would say if it was today, I think Kamala Harris would win. There are a whole bunch of factors that are complicating now moving forward. Obviously, what's happening in the Middle East. Obviously, Netanyahu is desperately trying to get Trump elected, and Biden is so stupid that he's moving right along with that and making it more likely that Trump will get elected. If there's a big war that breaks out in Iran and our own troops are fighting there will not be a rally around the flag effect. People will be pissed about it, and maybe they'll turn to Trump. But also at the same time, in a time of great chaos, that might turn people more off from Trump because Trump is such a loose cannon. He's so extreme that people want a steady hand of leadership, and he doesn't represent a steady hand of leadership. So again, if the election was today, I'd say 55% or 60% chance Kamala Harris wins. If you put a gun to my head and said I have to make a prediction for election day, right now I would still say 55 or 60% chance on election day of Kamala Harris winning. So I think it's more likely than not that it's Kamala Harris. I think the polls have been a little off lately. They're using a weird methodology where people self-report who they voted for. Nate Cohn, an expert on polling, he said this is basically oversampling Republicans because they don't want to have another polling miss where more Republicans get votes and Trump gets more votes than they expect. So if anything, they're sort of skewing the polls a little bit to be a little bit more pro-Trump and pro-Republican.
Well. I think that's totally right.
Yeah, and people memory hole 2022. Everybody was saying red wave, red wave, red wave. I did not. And I didn't because I knew 51% of the Republican candidates were election denialists. I know Americans hate that. I know Roe v. Wade and overturning abortion and Republican extremism on abortion really turned people off and really got Democrats to the polls. I do think the fear of Trump is so strong that it's not just Democrats now who fear him. I think a lot of centrists and independents and moderates fear him as well. So gun to my head, I would say it's probably likely that Kamala Harris will win. But having said that, she has just now started to show some strategic missteps, like doing that event with Liz Cheney and talking about, thank Dick Cheney for his service and stuff like that. There was Hillary was on MSNBC and basically said like, yeah, I talked to Kamala a few times and I talked to her before the debate. And making it very clear that like she's giving Kamala advice and Kamala's receptive to some of it. Horrible. Hillary's the only person who ever lost to Donald Trump. That is literally the last person you should ever take advice from. If anything, when she tells you something, you should do the exact opposite, then you'll be good. So again, I think it's likely she wins. But having said that, massive, massive grain of salt, there's a very decent chance that come election day, I'm sitting there with a coin and I'm flipping it. And so I don't think people can, can be lackadaisical about it. I think they need to balls to the walls, no pun intended, and run through the tape.
Yeah. One last pop question for you, Kyle. Every time I'm a horse race junkie. Gavin's a horse race junkie. We always like to pick one or two like dark horse races to see where we might be able to see some real election shakeup. I'm surprised more people haven't been keeping an eye on the Colin Allred Ted Cruz race. I think he's in a lot more trouble than he was ever in with Beto O'Rourke. I think the linebacker, Tennessee Titans thing, the fact that there's a big the suburbanization of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the entire suburbanization of Texas, really. Tons of people from California moving there, but they're not ready to get on board with Donald Trump. Do you think this is the time where Ted Cruz might actually get ousted from the Senate? Is his time over?
I would say it's possible, but unlikely, I would say, about Ted Cruz. But I do have a silver lining. I do have good news for people. I think it's very likely Rick Scott may be ousted. I think Rick Scott may be ousted. I think the Democrat could win the Florida Senate race. Rick Scott only won his previous Senate races and governor race by like 1% or less than that. So I think he could be gone. And the other thing is, I'm blanking on the dude's name, but the independent candidate running in Nebraska, is running a phenomenal campaign, and he might be able to unseat the Republican. And then the final thing I'd say is abortion access is on the ballot directly for a direct
in Missouri,
in Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, Missouri, Nevada, New York, South Dakota. Oof. So what I would say in that scenario is that really helps Democrats in Arizona, which is supposed to be a swing state, which, if anything, is leaning more pro-Trump than any of the other swing states.
But Gallego is way up on Kerry Lake, to your point about
way
election
up.
denialism.
Way up. Well, just like North Carolina with Mark Robinson, the black Nazi is down like 15 points to Stein, but the race between Trump and Kamala is dead tied. It's hard to imagine a scenario where the Democrat wins the Senate race by like 12 points and then Kamala loses. So North Carolina is looking kind of good. Arizona might be looking good because of the direct vote on abortion. And then also, again, Florida, there's been some polls where Kamala's only like 2 points down in Florida right now. So, you know, this election can surprise me. There's only one way this election would surprise me, and that's if there is still a secret Trump vote or secret Republican vote out there. That would surprise the shit out of me. What is very possible is either the pollsters get it exactly right, which means a narrow Kamala win, or there's a sleeper Democratic and Kamala vote out there and the Democrats outperform.
Yep. I think it's much more likely we see a 2022 kind of effect where, you know, people are just kind of at the point where they're ready to move on from the MAGA era. I think that Trump obviously is going to perform better than all of his sycophantic acolytes at the Senate level, much like in the previous elections. You know, he seems to do well, but his kind of acolytes don't. Either way, I think that you're 100% right, Kyle. I totally sign off on that analysis. Thank you so much for stopping by the Vanguard, man. Really appreciate the conversation. It was a great one.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Take care, man.
Yep.
Peace out. That was Kyle Kulinski from Secular Talk. Wow. Always fun to have that guy. And, you know, it feels a little surreal. You know, Gavin and I, like many of you, we spend a lot of mornings listening to that guy give us the news over the years. So always fun to just be able to gab with the guy. And boy, did he have some spicy takes for us. That was a great interview. Shout out to Kyle for bringing the heat. That was amazing.
Yeah, huge shout out to Kyle Kulinski for stopping by. Obviously, he's a busy man, and you know, taking the time for us is something that we really do genuinely appreciate. Obviously, that goes for all of our guests, but Kyle, someone we've been watching, listening to for a long time, big inspiration to our channel, big inspiration to, I feel like, probably any progressive or left-wing independent YouTube host. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, dude,
that
he basically invented the space.
He really did kind of invent the space. And, you know, like, obviously TYT probably predated Secular Talk, but they always had the studio and the production values. Kyle, for the first probably 5 years of his channel, was in his grandma's basement, I think, with zero production value, just spitting facts, giving his honest takes, and he built an audience that way. It's something that's, you know, it's hard to do it like that on YouTube now. It really is. That was a previous era, but he was a genuine pioneer. And I think someone who we can look to, not just that we agree with, but someone who's really proven a consistency, right? He has a consistency that's just really admirable and unparalleled in this space. There's so many grifters, and Kyle is someone who's truly just kept it real. He's a genuine person. He's an honest guy. And I think that, you know, for that reason, he remains probably one of the commentators I respect the most in the space. So yeah, it's a really an honor to have him on.